I want to talk about this GameDev Asset Mega Bundle, because so much goodness in here. The full bundle goes for under 25 euros. I don't know what that compares to in dollars, but it's probably nearing like the $20 range, which is insane for the amount of content we're getting here, because it includes 40 items, except it doesn't really include 40 items. I do feel the need to warn you right away. If you scroll down a little bit, you can see side by side, we've got the Stylized Nature Anime Mega Pack for Unreal Engine, and then we've got the same pack for the Unity engine, and those are counted as two separate items. They're not, because they're the same asset pack, so what do you care? I suppose if you're an Unreal developer, which if you're watching this on my channel, I'm guessing that you are, and you have friends that work in Unity, you can like give them the Unity key. I guess you can do that. Let's go cheapest to most expensive. Right away, I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to get the full bundle, because it is ridiculously cheap for the insane amount of content that you're getting out of this. Because do pay attention to the fact that, okay, half of these are duplicates, but still, every one of these is a whole asset pack in and of themselves, and there's a lot of them still. If we discount duplicates, I believe there's 25 items in total, all of which have tens, upwards of 100 assets in them sometimes. But if you want to just get the cheapest one, we have this €5 one with just 2 items. The castle kits, which I do own, and is actually pretty neat. It's not very extensive, but it'll get you started making a castle and making like a fantasy medieval style area. And then this horror ambient loop. I don't personally care for it, but of course horror is a very popular indie genre, so having these ambient loops to just set the scene a little bit if you're making a horror game might be very, very useful. I don't think that this is a very attractive bundle due to just the content. The pricing for it makes a lot of sense, right? Because you're still getting like a $40 and a $50 bundle for under 5. So it's still a good deal. I just don't think that content is quite there for this one. The 8 item bundle is a pretty good middle ground, I would say. But if you're going to be spending the 15, I think you should be spending the 23 instead, because the difference between these two bundles in price isn't that big. The difference in content is huge. But let's just go over this 15 euro one real quick. You get these two. Then you also get Music Game Essentials, a collection of music loops. I don't know how useful I personally think that this will be, but it sounds like it's kind of neat. It's probably good to have like as a temp track or something like that. I personally use things just like band sound and artlist music for my temp tracks, or some AI generated music for temp tracks and that kind of stuff, just to get the vibe in place. But this might work fairly well for that as well. I think a lot of stuff as far as like music and things that really like build the character of your game, you don't want to use assets for. So I don't think like music assets usually do very well. I do plan on making a full video talking about like asset usage at some point. We have got this abandoned factory. This is the first actually like really neat asset pack as far as like meshes go. This one is also pretty decent, but I think that this is the first one where I'm like, yeah, this feels like we're getting like up there in the high quality. So every one of these, of course, has a video to go with it, so that you can check them out. And you can, of course, just check out the asset packs on the marketplaces themselves for a little bit more information. I wish that they would include links to the individual packs so that you can check them out a little bit easier. But you can see we have got like this vertex painting on these materials and that kind of stuff, and the assets themselves just look really, really good. We've got rain and wind sounds. This is, compared to the game music essentials that we have here, this is the kind of pack that I love, because realistically, how many ways are there to make rain and wind sounds? Well, probably quite a lot, but having just a bundle with 10 rain, wind, and, well, cave sound effects as well, these are pretty generic sounds that work fairly well as long as they're like within the right scene. Of course, you don't want to have the rain sound effects on a sunny day, but rain is rain at the end of the day. There's not much to rain. and wind. So these are things that are infinitely reusable in a bunch of different projects. And that's the kind of asset pack that I personally really like. Compared to something like the Stylized Village, which looks really cool, but it's the kind of pack that I'm like, I want to have this so that I can use it in a game jam. But this isn't the kind of pack that really like meshes very well with other packs. Unless you are using this to fill out your world with your own assets that go within this same style as well, in which case they're useful. But for the most part, these are the kind of assets that I tend to use during game jams, so that I do have like decent quality assets, but I don't really care about things thematically vibing that much, like I would in a like full game. We have wooden buildings, which is also nice, I suppose. I don't know, it feels like this is just a part of a pack. It is definitely detailed enough if you like just go through this, right? We have quite a lot of options here, but a lot of like village packs will have effectively all of this and then more. So this feels like the kind of thing that if you get one of the bigger packs in the 40 item bundle, this one kind of doesn't really make sense to use all that much anymore. So I don't really know if I love this one. Because right next to it is a medieval town. And they're not wooden buildings here, so if you're specifically looking for wooden buildings for like maybe a fisher town or whatever in your game, this might be like a very specific use case for that. But for the most part, I think the medieval town is probably going to get you most of the use cases that the wooden buildings would have, but also include more than just buildings and more variations on those buildings. So I think that this one is a little redundant in some ways. And then we get to the 40 item bundle and we just have a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker. As you can see, there's a whole section here in the middle where we have a lot of duplicates, of course, but that's all medieval towns and medieval villages and whatever. That just builds upon this medieval town that we had here. It is actually interesting to note, and this is a little bit weird, is if we go to the 40 item bundle where we are right now, we have the medieval town for Unreal and Unity. But I believe if we go back to the 8 item bundle, we only have the Unreal version. You don't get the Unity asset store version, which in the end, I don't think practically matters for most people watching this, because if you're watching this on my channel, you're likely an Unreal user, or you're a Unity user that's moving to Unreal. So you probably don't care about having a Unity Marketplace key for it as well. But it's just a little bit weird that the same bundle, or the same asset pack has one key in one bundle and 2 keys in the other bundle. Then we get to monster sound effects. This is fairly specific, but it's also something that is really difficult to make. At least, again, I am not particularly an audio engineer or a sound engineer or whatever, so I'm not good at making this kind of stuff. So this is the kind of stuff that I personally am really excited to get with this bundle, because monsters specifically are difficult to create sounds for, because you're making sounds for something that doesn't actually exist. If you need sounds for animals, those animals exist and can be recorded and then tweaked a little bit to sound to your liking. But monsters are entirely made up creatures. So what does that sound like? That's a double-edged sword though, because we have 40 sound effects in this pack. And because monsters are entirely made up creatures, it might be the case that the monsters that you made don't look anything like these audio files sound like. And that's what makes monster sounds so difficult. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. If anything in here matches what you have created or other assets that you've bought, that's brilliant. But there's also a good chance that the styles just don't really match up and the vibes of the model and the textures doesn't really match with the sound. So do be a little bit careful with that, but I am very excited for this. We've got the Abandoned Factory again. We already had that, I believe, down here, but this is just a Unity version. We've got a desert town. We've got a bunch of medieval stuff that I'm just going to skip over because this is just, are you making a fantasy game? All of these probably mesh fairly well together. I would probably make something where I would make like one city using this pack and then a different city using this pack, so that you don't have those assets actually side by side, because that might create a bit too much contrast, but they can probably live together within like an entire game world fairly easily. This modular graveyard probably also goes fairly well with that. The modular dungeon and the destroyed buildings. This is also a section of the bundle that I personally am very excited for, because I think that all of these assets, the dungeon, the graveyard, and the destroyed buildings, might work fairly well for what I'm creating at the moment. Specifically the dungeon, but also the graveyard to some extent, and maybe some bits and pieces from the destroyed buildings, not too much. We've got more medieval stuff, because of course we do. We've got a post-apocalyptic town. Now, I do want to point out that I think this is the same bundle, but I do use different screenshots, so that is slightly weird with the way that it is presented. But if you look at this video, and we go to this video, it is, oh no, it's actually a different video, so it might be a different different pack after all, which would be weird, because that would mean that this pack only is included for Unity, which I kind of doubt. So this seems a little weird. My money is still on this being the same pack, but I'm not 100% sure at this point. We've got Stylized Nature, which this is the kind of pack that, along with these animals, that I also very much like, for the same reason that I like the winds and rain sound, right? There's only so many ways that you make a tree or an animal, and both of these are fairly stylized. So if you are making a hyper realistic like Red Dead Redemption 50 spiritual successor or whatever, maybe these assets aren't going to work for the animals in your game. But for most games, animals are background assets, small assets that you don't really look at that much, so you get away with quite a lot. And they're not so stylized that they would contrast that much in a slightly more realistic game. Especially, like, I think this has some like post-processing on it as well to like boost all of the saturation and stuff like that. You might need to tweak the textures a little bit to make them maybe a little bit more dull, maybe a little less contrasted, to make them fit in an area like this, like the Temple of Cthulhu. But I think that this is a highly reusable pack anyway. The Stylized Nature seems like it might be slightly less reusable, because these trees and nature assets are actually like quite stylized. So those do need to be in a stylized anime-ish kind of world, I would say. These aren't as easily adjustable to work within a more realistic setting, because these are actual set dressing, right? The animals are background assets that you don't really like pay attention to. These are the things that will actually make up your world, so the stylization for them becomes a lot more important. So it's a little bit less reusable, unless you have this style going for your game, in which case it looks fantastic, obviously. We've got a Native American village, we've got a modern castle and dungeon mega pack, a modular haunted house, a modular battlefield, a Wild West town, modular sci-fi posts, and I think this is the same bundle again, just with a slightly different screenshot, which they really shouldn't do that. But then again, I don't think they should be counting this as 40 items either. But even without it being 40 items, I think this main, like, big bundle is the one that I'm going to get. And it's the one that I would recommend you get as well, because there's just so much stuff in it. I took for 15 minutes to just quickly go over everything that's in this. There's so much content for, again, a really, really good price. So there's a link down below in the description. As of the time of recording this video, there's about 17 days left. I'm probably going to try to get this uploaded today. So you've got a little over 2 weeks left to decide whether or not you want to get this bundle. And after that, it'll be gone. Or maybe they'll extend it. Again, you never know with Humble Bundle. But do check out the link down below in the description. It does also get me a bit of an affiliate kickback. So that's always very much appreciated, as long as you don't use honey, that is. And I will see you all back when there's another mega asset bundle that I think is worthwhile. I don't tend to make these videos for packs that I think take it or leave it. I usually only make these videos when I see a pack and I'm like, everybody needs this. Which is why I'm here right now. So go pick it up.